Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. Our podcast is driven by our friends over at Ridge Rock Hunt Company, and I'll give them a shout out here at the end. I am Sam with Fall Obsession, your podcast host, and thank you guys for listening or streaming, however you guys might be joining us today. I am on here with a special guest, her first time joining us on Fall Obsession Podcast, and that is Sara Gamache. Did I say that right? I got it right?
You did.
All right,
Yeah.
Good deal. Off to a good start. How are you doing today, Sara?
I'm good. I just got done working for the day and looking forward to chatting with you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're really excited to have you join us, and I mean, I could give a little bit of a background as to why we wanted to have you on here, but I think it'd be better just to dive in and give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
All right. Yeah. So I live in Washington State, and I'm primarily an archery hunter. That's my thing. I do both compound and traditional archery. So I also shoot a recurve and a longbow. Recently picked up the longbow. That's like my newest adventure is the longbow. I've been hunting since I was 11 years old. So it's been a big part of my life, and you could say a lifestyle, basically. And I started hunting with my dad at that age, and then as I got older, my journey with hunting has kind of changed and adapted, and now I'm to the point where I have two of my own kids and they are hunting, and so most of my satisfaction comes from taking them out.
Awesome. Very cool. So you touched on the longbow portion, and I don't know why that just snagged me right here at the very beginning, but for me as a bow hunter myself, I'm very passionate about archery hunting as well. I have not dabbled into the traditional side of everything. It's a bucket list item for me at one point that I'd like to get into, but tell us a little bit about, and I guess I'm just going to start our conversation here with the longbow, but tell us a little bit about what interested you about that and why you moved into the traditional archery side of everything.
I was really looking for a new challenge. I had it in my head that when I got started with my compound, it was going to take me years and years to be successful and get my first animal, and I was going to struggle. And I got very lucky to have some good coaching and good mentors right out of the gate when I started my archery journey. So I progressed very fast, and I actually shot my first animal with a compound within, I think, 6 months of owning a bow. So I stuck with the compound for a couple years, and then, to be honest, I kind of just got a little bored with it, and I was like, I'm ready for my next challenge. And there were a lot of people that inspired me. Aaron Snyder's one. He's huge in the traditional archery world, and then my archery coach Joel Turner also primarily exclusively shoots traditional archery. So that was like where it started. And then when I got my first recurve bow, I was just instantly hooked, and I knew that I wanted to stick with it. It was definitely the challenge I was looking for. It's very humbling. If you think you're a good archer with a compound, just go pick up a recurve. You will learn very quickly. That's a whole different ball game. And I just found that it was more rewarding when I was able to get an animal that if I took it with my recurve. Just the emotions that I felt and the achievement that I felt with that was more rewarding than with a compound. I just recently picked up the longbow because I was on archery competition and my buddy had it there and he was selling it. He needed the money. It was a good deal. And I figured, hey, why not? I don't have an animal with a longbow, so I'm going to do it and see how it goes.
Awesome. So what hunts have you been on bow hunting traditionally?
Most of my hunts have been in Texas, and mostly because I wanted to have a good shot opportunity. Like it's a target-rich environment. Over here in Washington, it's extremely hard because we're hunting blacktail, which are very elusive, and also elk. and I wasn't quite sure I was ready to shoot an elk with a recurve yet. So we have a place in Texas that we go. It's like my husband and I and my kids, and it's kind of like our little getaway where we can all hunt. So I have shot an aoudad, a lot of hogs, and I'm trying to think what else. Some whitetail, 2 large whitetail bucks and a couple whitetail doe with my recurve there.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely something that obviously intrigues me very quickly whenever I get into a conversation with somebody about archery and the traditional side. I've talked to several people, and I'm definitely gonna have to try it at some point, because the compound is something that I love. But I'm like you, I'm always up for a new challenge. So it sounds like that might be it.
I would recommend it. Just don't get discouraged. It's one of those things where you could easily get discouraged. You kind of have to stick with it. And I think finding the right resources is big when it comes to, well, just archery in general, to make sure you have a good bow shop, you have good equipment, but then you have, will give you advice. I think you get into rabbit holes when you start trying to learn on social media. There's some bad information out there. So I use Tom Clum with Solid Archery Mechanics.
Okay.
When I started, so I had Joel Turner, who was already helping me, that continued to help me. And then I kind of brought Tom on to do the physical side of my form when I switched to traditional. And that was huge for me. Gotcha.
Very good to know. Well, to kind of steer us into the rest of the meat of our conversation today, and I know that the questions come and everything, but I call it the heavy question that I ask people, and that is, why are you a hunter?
Oh, there's a lot of reasons. It's kind of changed for me over the years. Like I said, I started hunting when I was 11 with my dad. So I'd say at that point, I wanted to do it because I wanted to spend time with my dad. My parents were divorced, so I only saw him on the weekends. And that was what he was doing every weekend. So I didn't really have a choice. If I wanted that quality time, I had to go out in the woods with him. So I wasn't really doing it because I was so eager to kill an animal. I was a little girl.
Yeah.
So my life, that was my reasoning. And then as I got older, I started realizing, hey, I'm not good at traditional sports. I need to find something I'm actually good at, and it's not basketball, soccer, track, any of that stuff. So I just continued my hunting journey, and I started going out on my own, solo hunting, and I found it very rewarding. It was very serene to me to be out in the woods. I've always had a crazy, hectic, busy life, and when I'm in the woods, that's like my peaceful time, almost like my meditation, where I just feel something during that time that I don't feel at any other point in my life, no matter what I'm doing. And then when I started becoming successful, I didn't shoot my first animal till I was 19. The rewards that came with that were huge. I really appreciate that as a hunter, we know where our meat came from. We know that those animals lived a good life. With the farming industry or the big factories out there that are doing these awful things to these animals, that they're living in confined spaces, they're being pumped full of hormones. That is an awful life for an animal. And to know that we are eating clean meat where the animal, had a chance to live in its natural environment, how God intended, it makes me feel good. And to be part of the process from start to finish, from the time that you shoot and kill the animal. I do all the field dressing myself. Most of the time I do all the butchering myself. And then to sit down and eat a steak at the end of the day, knowing that you were part of that entire process, is very rewarding to me.
Absolutely.
That's my long answer.
Very well said. Very well said. Yeah, it's you touched on the social media side of everything earlier in the discussion, and I feel like it, obviously that's where everybody's attention most of the time is driven these days, and I feel like it gives almost it depends on who you follow and who you spend your time tracking and everything, but it kind of gives a false sense of reality, in that it's all big deer and trophy picks and that kind of stuff, and the nitty gritty, the meat side of it, the provision side of it, as you alluded to, is that's where it hits home, and that's what it's all about. And it's refreshing to hear somebody bring that so strongly into their perspective of why they're a hunter and love the outdoors. So it's awesome.
Like, yeah, I try to do a good job at portraying that, when people ask me why I like hunting. Even my daughter, like I've instilled that into my kids that, hey, this is why we hunt. And I'll never forget, like there was a paraeducator at her school that was very much against hunting. And I went to pick my daughter up one day and she's like, I had the best conversation with your daughter. And she was like 8 at the time. And she said, I've been an anti-hunter my entire life. And the reason why is because I thought you guys were just bloodthirsty killers, like thrill killers, just doing it for fun. And I started talking to your daughter about hunting because she said you guys had gone on a hunting trip. And I asked her, well, why do you guys hunt? And she said, well, because we do it for food. And she explained this whole process to me. And she goes, by the end of the conversation, I'm now like pro hunting because now I understand it. And so it's really important to me that people know that, and the people that I talk to that are not hunters understand that that's why I do it.
Absolutely. 100%. So we obviously got in contact with you for this podcast and everything through social media, and have been a loyal follower of yours and have enjoyed watching your adventures up there in the Pacific Northwest for a while. But could you tell us just a little bit about first off, if anybody does follow your page, they know that you go on some crazy adventures, and in my opinion, you and your family, y'all, as with the archery challenges and that kind of stuff, y'all test your limits. You are always looking for the next challenge, as you said at the beginning. And what are some of those really challenging, really significant outdoor hunting adventures that you have been able to go on, whether it's up there in your area or elsewhere in the U.S. or the world?
Yeah, I really got interested in traveling internationally to hunt. I did my first Africa trip a few years ago and completely fell in love with it. I just love not only hunting the animals there, but also seeing a different culture. And so that's now became my new goal, is to try to do more international hunts. I would say probably my biggest one that I did was last August. I did a Cape buffalo hunt with my bow. And part of that was because I wanted the challenge. I was told that there were only a handful of women that have done it successfully. Most of the reasoning being that you have to be able to pull back such a large amount of weight, a high weight on the bow, that most women physically cannot do that. And people that do shoot Cape buffalo, even men that shoot Cape buffalo with a bow, they usually do it from a stand. It's extremely dangerous to do it spot and stock. So I called my PH and I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. And I was like, well, you do it. Because a lot of PHs won't even do archery hunts for Cape buffalo, let alone here's a woman saying she wants to do it. And luckily we had hunted before. He knew I was a good hunter. He knew I had good ethics. And I promised him I was going to take a whole year to prep for the hunt. And so he said, yeah, we'll do it. He said it's the most nervous he's ever been, but he'd do it. So I spent an entire year working my butt off in the gym so that I could increase my weight up to about 75 pounds. And then I also worked on an arrow build with Troy Fowler, who some people know as the Ranch Fairy. He's like the high FOC guy in the archery world. Yeah. To do an arrow build, I actually traveled with him to Texas to a ranch so that we could put that arrow to the test. Like, that's how far I went, that I wanted to actually test those arrows before I went on this trip. I listened to podcasts, I read books, I did a ton of research on Cape buffalo hunting. And then I went on that trip and was successful. So I was extremely proud to be one of the only women who have done that with a bow on foot successfully, without having the animal needing to be killed with a rifle. Like, it was just the one arrow, and we have it on film. So that was another good thing.
Wow, that's incredible. How far was he?
23 yards.
23 yards.
At 23 yards, they look like they're at like 5 yards. They're such big animals, and my PH was ranging for me and calling out yardage, and we agreed that I needed to be about 20 yards to get the penetration that we were going to need. And so he would range, and I'd be like, dude, this thing is like right in front of us. I'm like, how close are we? And he'd say, we're 40 yards. We need to close another 20. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, it's just how big. It's misleading, how close you are.
So I know you talked about the training and preparing for a hunt like that, and you know the arrow build and stuff like that. But what was your entire archery setup like for that hunt? What kind of rig and everything were you running?
Yeah, so I was using my PSE. I think at the time it was my Mach 1, which I love PSE bows because with their cam system and their whole setup, I can pull back that much weight. I've never been able to pull back that much weight on other major brands like Coit, Matthews. I've tried, I can't do it. So that's why I went with PSE. I think we ended with like a 730 grain arrow. It was a Serious Arrow was the brand, and the broadhead was a Tough Head broadhead. I think we had 300 or 350 grains was the broadhead weight. And I don't know what speed the arrows was. I never got to do a speed test on it, but that full setup was pretty gnarly. So, I mean, it looked like a lawn dart on the front. So, and it's amazing how accurate. I thought that when I was doing this crazy arrow setup, I would completely just have to resight my bow and make all these dramatic adjustments to my sight and my sight tape. And I really didn't. Those arrows flew extremely accurate out to like 30, 35 yards with minor adjustments to my bow.
Wow. That's impressive. I wouldn't have thought that either.
Yeah, so I was surprised. I'm almost like, well, I could actually shoot more accurately at some of these archery shoots with a heavier arrow setup. I don't have generally a big, heavy, setup or high FOC for my regular hunts. It was just primarily for the Cape Buffalo. That's what you have to have.
Right. Yeah. No, I asked just because I'm always curious. I like to mess around and tinker with bows and stuff as well. And
guys, I don't go down that rabbit hole. I don't know that I have the knowledge for that, but that's like Troy. He's one of those guys. And so I know what you're talking about.
As you were training and preparing for this hunt, were you getting a bunch of weird looks when you were building this bow and talking about the purpose of everything like that? Was it?
Yeah, I think that people that thought I was crazy, or at the very least, why do you have a death wish? My PH actually had several people I knew, acquaintances and friends that were hunting the weeks leading up to when I was showing up, and he was putting them in blinds and then telling them, you need to convince Sarah this is how she needs to do it when she comes. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it from a blind. And so I made a deal with him. On the first day, I would sit in a ground blind and see how I felt about it. And I did it. And I was like, no, we're not doing this. This is not how I want to do this hunt. We will do it spot and stock. And so he agreed to it. And it is terrifying. I mean, when you're in the open, like in Africa, how the terrain is where we were hunting, there's no trees to climb. There's nowhere to run, to hide from this thing. You are standing face to face. And if it wants to run at you and trample you, you're done. And it did mock charge us 3 times leading up to me getting an arrow in it. And when it when it comes at you, you cannot turn and run. Like you had as a group. So it was myself and 2 PHs and then 2 trackers. For once I hit the animal, if we had to do any blood trailing, we all just had to like wave our arms, make noises, and try to convince this thing to stop and not come all the way to us. So you can imagine what it's like having this animal come at you, and your every instinct in your body is telling you to turn and run, and you can't. You have to stand there and hold your ground and try to scare this thing off. So it's just that happening 3 times leading up to me having to make a good shot. And my PH had told me they will mock charge a couple times, and then that's all the warning you get. And then eventually they just come right for you. And so he had told me, just so you know, now that we've been mock charged 3 times, you might only have 1 opportunity to get this arrow in before this thing's coming. So that's what's going through my head waiting up. Then I have to know I need to make a perfect shot. So yeah, it was crazy.
That's insane. Just literally transitioning from for lack of a better term, just your normal, typical, traditional bow hunting mentality to survival mode, basically. That's insane. I mean, I've never hunted Africa, and I mean, not that I wouldn't want to, but it hadn't come my way, and I don't know a whole lot about it because of that. But I know that things are dangerous, but that's a crazy feeling to have. I can only imagine, for sure. Holy cow.
Yeah, it was, well, now I feel like I need to keep doing it. So now my next thing is I'm going to do a brown bear hunt in Alaska with my bow. That's supposed to be for 2023. And my husband has now officially applied. He made me go apply for a life insurance policy. So he's like, you're going to keep doing this. You need a life insurance policy.
We had some guests last year actually on our podcast, some previous episodes. They went on a brown bear hunt up there, and it was, I think he ended up putting, he took his bow. He also took firearms just in case. And I think he ended up putting 7 or 8 rounds between his rifle and his revolver in this brown bear. It's a pretty crazy and intense story for sure. I know those things they can be just as vicious in the wrong situation for sure. So
yeah.
Well, good luck to you on that one. I hope that one works out. It does sound like it would be a fun trip. So hope you get to go.
Hoping so. Thank you.
So kind of moving on a little bit in our conversation here. I know I mentioned your social media page and everything, and you post frequently about your archery, your hunting, your outdoor adventures and endeavors on there. What motivates you and inspires you to do that, to share your experiences with any and all?
Well, I started my page. I started it like with no real goals or intentions. I noticed that there were other women out there that were posting about hunting, that they had a big following. And I was thinking, man, I mean, I've been doing this my whole life, and I have tons of content, tons of pictures that I've never really shared with people. And, maybe this would be cool to start sharing and just see where it goes. So I didn't have any goals in mind, but it grew very quickly. And I started finding that it was very rewarding, knowing how much inspiration I was bringing to other women out there, women that had kind of started where I did, where I have been hunting since I'm 11, but that was primarily rifle hunting. And I never thought about archery because I didn't know any other women who archery hunted, especially when social media wasn't a big thing. I don't think there were very many. And I kind of just had it in my head that it was like a guy's thing, and that it was for women to do that. And my dad never encouraged me to do it. He just always thought it was fine that I rifle hunted. So then when I got my page and I started posting about it, there's all this women coming out of the woodwork being like, man, I've always wanted to try something like this, but I just didn't think women did it. And so I've actually even done a lot of lessons, like women that have found my social media page locally and come to my house, and I give them lessons, or I give them resources they need, like putting them in touch with Joel Turner, my archery coach, or sending them to my archery shop, Archery World, so that they can go get fitted for a bow. And so I really enjoy the messages that I receive from people saying, hey, I thought this wasn't possible for me. I followed your page. It gave me the inspiration, or, lit that fire for me to take the next step. And then when they're sending you like their successful hunting pictures, I mean, it's just really cool.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Yeah, it's always interesting to see kind of where everybody's what everybody's take is on their social media presence, and obviously some are probably a little more true deep down than others, but just as far as their intentions behind it. But that's really cool that you're getting to, not just from an online standpoint, but actually, even like you mentioned, the local people, being able to educate from that standpoint is really neat. So
yeah, you get to meet a lot of cool people through social media. I'm a very social person, so I've even organized like group hunts and got to meet people in person or hunt with people in person that maybe I'd been talking to over social media, and then that connection, that real life connection is rewarding too.
Right, absolutely, 100% agree. So, kind of going off of the social media, the online side of everything, anybody who follows your page probably also knows that you're a very patriotic person. and very passionate about your love for your country. And I know in recent years, obviously, as everybody should if they're listening to this, some challenges and trying to tread lightly here, some challenges and stuff that's come up. I don't normally talk about politics and stuff on our podcast, but we're dipping our toe into that pond just a little bit here. But I know you've had some pretty unique experiences since COVID and everything started. What challenges, if any, we'll start it off with this, have you had to deal with from the online standpoint when expressing your love for both hunt and country?
Luckily, I don't get a whole lot of pushback. I think most of everyone who follows me is on the same page with me. So when I'm posting about something political, which also was never my intention with my social media, like that just kind of came about with, like you said, the stuff that was happening with COVID. I'm in Washington, so I'm in a very liberal state, and in a state that had a lot of crazy lockdowns, a crazy governor during that whole time. Well, I mean, all the time since he's been governor, done crazy stuff, but especially during COVID, we were up against a lot. My husband's in the military. My husband served for 18 years now. He's getting ready to retire in a couple years. And it really didn't sit right with me, knowing that him, along with everyone else, all the other people that serve our country, have sacrificed so much for our freedoms, and then turning around and watching our freedoms getting taken away from us like that, like just within those 2 years, like how much was taken away from us. And it just really boiled my blood. So I spent a lot of time going to rallies, like basically doing everything I could to speak out, trying to defy some of these laws, even owning my own business here in Washington. They threatened to, well, there was a point when everything was supposed to be closed. And I stood up and I was like, no, I'm not closing the doors on my business. This isn't right. Like, you're taking away our freedoms. There's constitutional things that are being violated here. And I could just kind of had it out with the state. I had the state threatening to close my business down, threatened to fine me. I kind of had to go to my husband and say, hey, this is a big deal. Like, I could lose everything that I've worked for. How do you feel about me continuing to just stand my ground? And he said, I want you to. So I just stood my ground and said, yeah, if you're going to come shut me down, do it. And just kind of called their bluff, and they never ended up doing anything. Most of what my state did was just kind of fear mongering, saying they were going to do stuff to people and then not following through, because legally they couldn't. So yeah, I did do a lot of posting about the political stuff, and I did get some people that were like, hey, I follow you for hunting content and you're kind of going off the deep end here. And I was like, well, then unfollow me, because I'm not going to tailor my social media and not speak my mind about stuff that I feel very passionately about. That's not my problem. So just unfollow me. So maybe I lost followers. I maybe gained some followers. I don't know. I don't care. I did get kicked. There was an incident where I got kicked off of a plane of Alaska Airlines for wearing a Trump mask. I don't know if you probably heard about that, but that went viral, really viral, really, really viral. I posted that video of me getting kicked off on my TikTok, and I think it has like 17 million views. I had like Donald Trump Jr. posting about it, some really big hunting celebrities like the Bomars and Levi and Samantha Morgan posting about it. So that was a huge thing that happened, that I became kind of known for, the girl that got kicked off for wearing a Trump mask. Crazy times we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it is what it is, and we've all had to deal with it in different ways. And obviously, you all up there in the area you guys are as you just mentioned, it's been an adventure just with the general political state of the area, not helping or anything. But yeah, it's I agree when stuff like that is posted, or you have a page intended for one thing and it takes a political tone for anything, you get people, it's almost like you said, 50-50. You get people who are who are bailing because it's like, oh, I'm done with this, or you have people, you draw even more people in that are like, oh, heck yeah. But you know, it's admirable in my opinion to stand your ground for sure. And we, from an online standpoint, we're fortunate as an organization that all we've had to deal with all this has just been some significant shadow banning and stuff online. We've never had to actually deal with anything boots on the ground down here, thankfully. But yeah, it very good on you for standing up for what you believe in. And I just want to take the opportunity also to thank you and your husband both for your service and everything. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's not always easy to stand up and speak out, but I wish more people would do it. I think we might be able to accomplish more if we had more people that were outspoken, but it is what it is. Some people might share the same beliefs as me and not feel comfortable posting about or speaking about it. That's okay. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. So how, with your husband being active military, how often does he get to hunt with you?
Never. We've never out on a hunt together. I mean, we have in the sense, well, we will go to, like, for instance, we went to Africa together, but even when we're doing stuff like that, or if we're in Texas together, we're not physically like sitting in a stand together, physically out spot and stalking. We're usually, he's off with one PH and I'm off with another. That's going to change when he retires. We will be able to do more hunts together, but with having young kids, it's kind of a deal where if he's out hunting, I'm at home watching the kids, and vice versa. He was deployed a lot. The beginning, like, we've been married for 12 years, and for the first 10 years of that, he was gone 6 to 8 months a year. So he was always gone. He didn't have a whole lot of time to go hunting, unfortunately. And for me, hunting was hard because I would have to find a babysitter. I mean, there was actually a time I hired a live-in nanny during elk season so I could go out elk hunt and she could watch the kids. Fortunate to have family close to us that they do take the kids a lot of the time. But yeah, him and I hunting together is not really our thing. He didn't hunt when we were married. When we got married, like when we met, he had never hunted before. So that's like a new journey for him, and luckily he fell in love with it. I told him he kind of needed to, because I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna work unless you start hunting and enjoy it. So, and now he loves it. And like, so this year, so when I did that Keep Buffalo hunt in Africa, I went by myself. I flew over there. I had been there before and hunted with that PH, so I felt comfortable doing that by myself. And this year he's gonna go and I'm gonna stay behind with the kids. So we do a lot of trading off.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it's always a compromise. I got 2 young kids myself, so I'm always
okay. Yeah,
you know how, yeah, I know the grind.
Are they?
What's that?
How old are your kids?
My son, he turns 4 here in a couple weeks, and my daughter's 2.5, so little.
Got a while till they start hunting. I was gonna say, just wait, and then your world's gonna change when you're taking them out hunting.
I know. My boy's already asking me, like, when's he gonna get to go hunting with me and all that kind of stuff. He's excited about it, and I think I have the privilege of being able to hunt with my dad every fall and everything, and grew up doing that. So I'm hoping that maybe not for like a legitimate hunt, but as early as this year, he can maybe have a couple times he at least tags along to get out there and start experiencing it. So we're going to get him started at a young age. So
nice. Yeah, that's very rewarding when you just start taking your kids. My daughter just shot her first animal with a bow at 10 years old. I was really excited about that.
Awesome.
When we were so yeah, I think I got both my kids little compounds when they were like 5 or 6. Started out with like those little dinky like recurves you can get at like Cabela's just to screw around with in the yard, and then got them some good bows. So I mean, some people think, oh, you can't get kids started in this until they're way older, and that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my archery coach, Joel Turner, his son Bodie Turner just won Vegas, world-class archery shoot at 15 years old up against the pros, and Joel had a little bow in his hand at 3 years old. I mean, he has videos of his kids shooting at 3 years old, so it's never too early.
Yeah.
Get them started.
Absolutely. So with your kids, what I mean, if she's bow hunting now, what kind of rig do you have her set up with? I'm just curious because I know we have a lot of parents and parents of youth hunters that listen to our podcast. So what kind of rig do you have her set up with?
So her very first bow was a Bear Cruiser Light, and she grew out of that. And I don't know that they make those anymore either. And then we upgraded her to the PSE. I believe it's called the Mini Burner, or there might be another one. The Mini Burner might be what my son has, but PSE makes some good kids bows. And you want to get one for kids that start out with a light poundage, so they're really adjustable, that can start out at like 5 to 10 pounds and go all the way up to hunting weight, because that's your goal. Is, you know, obviously it's going to take some time. I think it took her 3 or 4 years to be able to get up to 40 pounds, which some full-grown women can't do right out of the gate. And it's just getting them out there and doing those reps. That's what builds their strength and builds their muscle memory. I mean, for kids, you're not going to be sending them to the gym to do workouts, really. It's going to come down to putting the time in with them and slowly working them up. And then with kids, as they're growing, you have to increase their draw length constantly. So always checking and making sure that their draw length is good. That's something you don't think of. I didn't think of it, because as an adult, you're not constantly adjusting your draw length. But with kids, you're going to have to do that. And so that's been a good setup for her, and she loves it.
Awesome. Well, glad to hear it. I'll keep that in mind here. And here in a couple of years, I might need to revisit this podcast episode. So.
Yeah, and another thing with kids is you just have to find ways to make it fun for them. You know, like I put like balloons out, blow up balloons and put balloons on the target. Like every kid likes to be able to shoot out a balloon and pop it. And I even take them on my 3D archery shoots. Those are a lot of fun for kids to, you know, to shoot at different targets. And some shoots we go to have really cool ones like dinosaurs and random stuff, and they really enjoy that. So
awesome. Well, very cool. Well, Sarah, before we head for home or anything, first off, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on or anything before we start to close it out?
I can't think of anything. I mean, if people already don't follow me, they can find me on Instagram, is where I post most of my content, and it's PNW and then _Huntress. And I try to keep that page updated and, you know, post my adventures on there and what I'm up to. I also have a website that people can go to, pnwhuntress.com, and I try to post like my events on there, like the different archery shoots that I'm going to throughout the year. If you ever want to come hunt with me, I do organized group hunts all over. Like I'm doing one next year in New Zealand. So there's opportunities for stuff like that. And yeah, I'm pretty down to earth. So if someone has questions for me, you know, listen to the podcast and wants more information on something, just reach out. I try to make sure that I reply to everyone. Sometimes I get busy, but I always try to make sure I answer people's questions. That any help they need with archery, just feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for coming on and joining us for a little while this week for our episode, and
thank you.
I've enjoyed it. Good to talk to you and get to know you a little bit.
I appreciate it, and good luck in your hunting adventures and whatever you got going on this year for hunting.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. You as well. Real quick for our listeners, if you guys haven't already, hit the follow and subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. We're on all major podcast platforms. Our episodes and podcast videos are also on our YouTube channel. Go subscribe. We're also on Waypoint TV, which is a free streaming service for hunting shows and podcasts and stuff like that. fallobsession.com is our website. That's where you guys can go to find all of our content covering hundreds of different subjects in the hunting and outdoor industry. So head on over there and explore around, and follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also on Go Wild app, which is a censorship-free app for hunters and outdoorsmen. So go check it out. Ridge Rock Hunt Company is the podcast sponsor. Derek and Lacey in Mississippi, they book hunts, and they will get you set up with a hunt that meets your budget and your criteria in a time frame that works for you. So Derek's a good guy. All of his outfitters are vetted in his network and trusted, so he guarantees a good experience. So go check out Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Thank you again, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
All right, guys. Thank you all for listening, and we will be back again next Monday for another Fall Obsession podcast episode.